The 2024 election was a disaster for many of the mainstream predictors and pollsters, and one of the most prominent of them all is blaming his prediction failure on one person who was doing one thing, and I have the full story for you next. You may be familiar with Allan Lichtman, a renowned American historian known as Election Nostradamus, who touted his keys to the White House formula on many news channels, and I have to admit I found his unchanging formula convincing and reassuring on more than one occasion. Let's revisit those moments when he reassured me and maybe you too.
It's going to be a path-breaking victory, the first woman president, Kamala Harris. My predictions have stood the test of time. The keys are the North Star, the unchanging system.
And you are sticking right now that the keys predict that Vice President Harris wins the election in 6 days.
That's right. It's possible, but a lot would have to go wrong for Harris to lose.
So it was possible and it happened. Why?
Yes, why? And Lichtman also says there's a who, an election villain who is responsible for his miscalculation. And I'll have that for you in a minute, but first, here's a great and perhaps obvious question that someone like Chris Cuomo needed to ask him with an eye towards 2028, assuming Lichtman will be invited back after this year's fumble. And it sets him up to reveal the wildcard variable that was not part of his formula, the why.
Do you have to add a key? Do you have to adjust the keys?
That is very, very possible. I admitted I was wrong. I admitted the keys don't work. Remember, the premise of the keys is that a rational, pragmatic electorate decides whether the White House party is governed well enough to get 4 more years. But if the views of the White House party are controlled by disinformation, particularly driven by those who are so rich that they have extraordinary influence beyond anyone else, then maybe the premise of the keys needs to be changed. I have 4 years to figure this out. I haven't figured it out yet, Chris.
So who do you think could be so rich and so plugged into an information superhighway that he would have the means to influence the outcome of an election? And what about motive? Is there a nefarious capitalist who supports Trump's anti-immigration ideology, his authoritarian leanings, and zeal for capitalism without guardrails? Have a listen as Lichtman identifies the scapegoat that he failed to identify before the election, while at the same time goes outside the role of an analyst to drop some wisdom bombs about the democratic process.
What did you figure out about the analysis of the race?
Yes, as I said, things could go wrong. There could be unprecedented events that change the pattern of 160 years of history. That's what happened here. 2 things. Number one, disinformation. We've always had disinformation, but disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented degree. Starts with Fox News and conservative media, conservative podcasters with tens of millions of views. But we've seen something brand new this time. The 300 billionaire Elon Musk putting his thumb on the scales through his control of X, formerly Twitter. It's been reported that his misinformation has had billions, literally billions of views. And this has spread to every aspect of this election. There is misinformation about everything about the economy, inflation, jobs, unemployment, the stock market, growth. There is vast disinformation about undocumented immigrants, that they're supposedly killers who are out to get you. In fact, studies by Cato and the National Institute of Justice show undocumented immigrants are the most law-abiding segment of our society, committed crimes and violent crimes, less than half that of native-born Americans. It spread to the hurricane relief, spreading lies that hurricane relief dollars were being diverted to migrants. It's lies about the Ukraine war, that somehow Ukraine was responsible for having one of the world's great powers invade a third or fourth-rate power. And, as scholars have shown, once you dissolve truth, democracy dissolves along with it. The way authoritarianism takes hold, and it's taking hold all over the world, not just here, is not through force, but but through the manipulation of information. As George Orwell warned in 1984, in that dictatorship, war is peace, famine is plenty. The other thing that's unique about this election is the explosion of elements that have always been present, the dark side of American history, but that have been agitated to an unprecedented degree in this election. And I'm talking about racism, misogyny, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, with a woman of color being a particular target. And these things cross ethnic and racial lines.
I think it's fair to say that Lichtman swung and missed on his 13 keys to the White House, but I think he did hit a home run with the personal feelings that he injected into the conversation about the things that Musk was able to amplify on behalf of Donald Trump. And it will be interesting to see if he's still relevant in 2028, because the entire election predictor industry has a terrible track record over the last 12 years. And I hope the news networks replace that time invested in them with something that we can point to after the election and say, yes, that was real and that was relevant. As for the chaos that Elon Musk was able to direct and amplify to a very large level, this scenario creates some massive, uncharted, and perplexing waters as the power of technology and social media continues to race way ahead of policies and guardrails. And the free speech that our country was founded on now, ironically, provides a measure of protection for Elon Musk. I don't know what the solution is for putting the misinformation genie back in the bottle, but in other industries we do have mechanisms in place. Television stations and advertisers can be penalized, and we do car, food, and drug recalls all the time. So there is some precedence for holding companies accountable when they distribute harmful rubbish. And now that Elon Musk is the world's largest distributor of information rubbish, our legislators need to figure out how to maintain free speech without getting steamrolled by the billionaire and his pet platform. I'm Dan. Thanks for watching, and let's continue to occupy democracy together.